the Yankees and Mets, unless all they do, if they go on 40-game losing streaks, the Yankees and Mets are going to be buyers. And I think you and I will end up doing a show every week, Ryan, where we change the picture of what that means for even just this specific team.
Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post. My name is Ryan Sampson, but he's the star of the show, Joel Sherman. Today is Monday, June 23rd. The New York Yankees finally win a series, Joel, since the last time we spoke. Over the weekend, they take 2 out of 3 against the Baltimore Orioles. They lost 3 out of 4 against the Angels last week as well. But I want to get started here before anything else. Like always, I got to ask you, how you doing on this hot, steamy Monday morning?
Yeah, just busy. Got the show. Got to write my online column. Got to do some stuff for MLB Network to prepare for tomorrow. Got a doctor's appointment someplace in the middle of all this. Maybe two. I'm getting old, Ryan, and the body's giving out. But yeah, no, good. Interesting baseball in New York as both New York teams have struggled of late these last 2 weeks, and you wonder what the implications are. Is this hey, every team's going to have a bad 10-day to 2-week period, or are the New York teams telling us something about themselves right now? So I think it's a little fascinating kind of moment in the season to see it. It's, like just thinking about the Mets a little bit, Ryan, and I know we're doing a Yankee webcast here, but, June saved their season last year.
Yeah.
Uh, they were the best team in the National League last June. Only the Astros were better than them in the major leagues. It saved their season. They were on the brink of becoming sellers in July if things didn't get better, and they got much better. So this is a key month for that fulcrum as we get to, July 1st is midseason. And we're pretty darn close to it now.
Yeah.
And so and then, we're off and running draft all-star draft, all-star game, and then 2 weeks sprint to the trade deadline on the 31st. So I think both New York teams are going to be very active to try to figure out what they need, but it's an interesting moment for both teams to decide what do they need.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point about where we are in this point of the season, because it's something you alluded to also last week in that show where you said, Ryan, this is where a lot of teams find themselves and they try and figure out, can we actually make a run at a wild card spot, or are we pretenders here and maybe we should think about selling off some pieces, to get better. And this is like a moment here for the Yankees and Mets where, like you said, they're both going through this June swoon here. I mean, the Yankees had just coming off getting swept by the Red Sox last week, and then they go through some struggles against the Angels, and it was nice to see them win a series. I think yesterday was a big win for them in the terms of, hey, we can win a game. And I think there's a theme here. I'll get to it a little bit later in the show. I want to start off, though, with Joel's notebook, because I got to ask you, Joel, the starting pitching in this staff have really surprised me, because I think there was a moment there a couple weeks ago where we were saying maybe the magic bullets are out for some of these guys who are giving you more than you normally see. But a guy like Will Warren yesterday gives you another 6+ innings, gives you 2-run ball, gives you a chance to win a baseball game, and he's had a very stellar season. So what do you make of Will Warren and what he's done so far this year and the rest of this rotation?
Yeah, Ryan, if you don't mind, can I just comment on something you said about the time of year?
Yeah.
So I had never met Tony Manzolino, the new interim manager of the Orioles, and I went over and introduced myself and chatted with him yesterday at the ballpark. And we're sitting here today, and they're 11 games under 500 after losing 2 of 3. But the way the American League is, they're 6.5 out of the last wild card. Now, their chances of jumping all those teams and getting to, like, let's pretend it's 84 or 85 wins is going to be the third wild card. But they kind of like don't really want to give up. I think they're going to, but it highlights, especially in the American League, how few sellers there might
Mm.
be, because teams want to convince themselves we're one good, if Baltimore has a 5-game winning streak, I don't think their starting pitching will allow this. And the bulk of their starting pitching that's decent isn't expected to join them until August. Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, Tyler Wells. So I think that they're a kind of team that might sell and then see like, hey, you know what? We're kind of adding 3 pretty good starters at about August 1st. So if we trade all of our walk year collateral, Cedric Mullins, etc., maybe the closer Felix Bautista. Can we get a little better even as the season goes along?
Right.
I just so I just want to highlight how sensitive this time of year is. Like a good week or two for almost anyone in the American League that's not Oakland or the White Sox. He's going to change things a lot. And a bad week or two by, say, like a couple of those teams in the AL Central who we know don't want to give up. But at some point, you have to face reality. So, anyway, I didn't mean to go off, but just to highlight what you said, it's such a sensitive time of the year for you're going to run out of time to make a decision,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why there's no trades at this time of year. The Devers thing is such a surprise because everyone wants to use as much time as possible for a what do I really what who am I?
Who am
Am
I?
I a
Right.
buyer, seller? And then B, like, what are my real needs? Again, like to go back to the Mets, maybe a month ago, I would have said their needs were one thing. I'm not sure. Like, do they need a starting pitcher also? I think they need a bat. I think they need
Yeah.
at least one reliever. So like that their picture is changing. And I think the other, and just lastly, because I think it's very important for all fan bases, but we're obviously talking to the Yankee fan base. The term I think that Brian Cashman uses all the time is remember 6 p.m. on July 31st, it's pencils down. Like that's the last time you can help your team. And so if you lose a player, Anthony Volpe breaks his thumb on August 1st, you can't be like, well, let's go get a shortstop. You're done at that point. So one of the other things you're trying to do between now and July 31st is ask the question, how do I get as bulletproof as possible while knowing I'll never plug every hole in the dike? So that comes up also. So I'm sorry I veered off, Ryan. I just thought it was important to kind of like remind folks, we go from the it's early portion of the season, and then all of a sudden you go, wow, everyone's going to reach 81 games this week, which is the halfway mark of the season. Everyone will be there, and then we'll be less than a month away from the last from pencils down.
Yeah.
And everyone has to decide in that period, who am I? What do I want to do about it? How bulletproof can I make my contender?
Yeah, again, before we get to Joel's notebook here again, I do want to reiterate to you, this is also going to be clarity for you and John and all the MLB reporters on, okay, this is who we really think could be sellers now, and maybe these names we can actually look at and say this is a real potential possibility for a Mets or a Yankees team, and these are guys we could see them potentially targeting. Obviously, you don't know the conversations that are going on unless that's being revealed to you, but like it gives you an actual like chance to write about these are the teams that we think actually right now in this position, a couple weeks from now, these are the players that we could see actually being moved.
So I think, Ryan, we've done a lot of shows together now, and I think you're getting a better idea. Like my brain moves in like 11 different ways at all times. So yesterday, when Kevin Durant is
Yeah.
traded, I asked myself, who's Kevin Durant in MLB? And I do think the answer is Jacob Degrom. They were born 3 months apart in 1988. And you can make a case like when they're on the court, when they're on the field, they're still as like almost as good as anybody. But to highlight it, I talked to a Ranger person yesterday just to kind of satisfy my Jones, because this is how, again, my brain works. I'm like, hey, and he's like, yeah, you could tell me anything. They're 38 and 40. Wow, they're underachieving. They're 2 games out of a wild card spot. They're built to win now. They he's like, but our offense isn't good.
Yeah.
Why isn't good? We still aren't at peace with why it isn't good and why it won't. Because like if you go around the diamond and say, all right, well, they got this guy, like he's a pretty good offensive player, and that guy, now, like it should add up to something, and it hasn't yet. So if you told me they did a week's worth of losing, uh, would that change anything? Look, DeGrom's a bad case because he has a complete no trade clause. And I think it would actually have to be if he agreed to be traded. And I don't think he would. Like, I don't want our aggregator friends to go nuts as usual, but like, I don't think he'd say yes to a trade. I've heard from people close to him. He's very comfortable with his family in Dallas during the season. Comfort means a lot to him. He's making a lot of money, but like Durant, he could probably earmark, here's the only two places I would go if you
Right.
can make a trade with them. But it just shows, to your point about me, John, and some of the other people who kind of like do this on a 24/7 basis, like the picture keeps changing because a week is going this time of year, a few games matter. I remember when Dave Dombrowski's final days with the Tigers, he was literally deciding, like, if we win these two games, I'm gonna feel different on July 23rd, 24th. And that was the year I think he traded Cespedes, maybe Verlander, a few other guys, and then actually lost his job not long afterwards. But just again to reiterate that, like the Yankees and Mets, unless all they do, if they go on 40-game losing streaks, the Yankees and Mets are going to be buyers. And I think you and I will end up doing a show every week, Ryan, where we change the picture of what that means for even just this specific team because of injury, underperformance, overperformance, etc. And having a veteran front office that has been through a lot of these is probably advantageous. And the Yankees are a veteran front office that has been through a lot of these and actually knows how to make a trade in July.
Yeah, I think also, Joel, like for the Yankees and when they're trying to address their needs, we have the fun capability here to go back and forth and be like, what are the trends that we're noticing in these games? Like, what's something that interests you or something that piqued your interest? And like, this is happening that Boone's doing right now, or this is happening from this player performance that I think really needs to be addressed. So I think that's what makes this fun is like, like we get to do this week by week and like, I think they really need a starter. Joel, I think they really need a bat. I think they might need a backup catcher. Like you ask, we go about it and we do these every single week. And these games matter in June, like you're saying. Every single game is another data point of evidence for them to figure out where are we going to address our holes because the Yankees will be buyers here by the end of July.
Yeah, Ryan, I think all excellent points. And if I could just piggyback on what you said and get back to your question, which I kind of rudely stepped away from for a second, and I didn't mean to there, is I think the Yankees have done an important thing to this moment, which was we didn't know if the Yankees were going to have to trade for a depth starter. And that still could be the case. You're always just a bad injury away from it. But I think the Yankees have reached the point where to trade for a starting pitcher, they must believe the pitcher they're trading for is somebody who would start a playoff game over Fried, Rodon, Schmidt, and eventually Heel.
Mm-hmm.
And now, will that pitcher be available? If they are available, think about how many teams are going to be in it. Why would the Yankees get them?
Right.
So like that's going to be, again, the Yankees are a veteran front office. They know how to get trades done at this time of year. But I think part of it, unless something tremendously bad happens here, I don't think they're just looking for filler because let's give credit where credit is due. Our shows in the early portions of the year were Cole's out for the year. Hill's going to miss half a season. Schmidt's on the IL. Stroman followed him onto the IL. How are they going to survive? Their pitching program is excellent. And so they got a lot out of Ryan Yarbrough. They've gotten a lot out of Will Warren as far as like, this is one of those places I went and looked on Baseball Reference today, Ryan. Will Warren has a 0.1 WAR. And it's why I tell people all the time, you got to be careful about a stat that, first of all, has no true formula because there's a different one on baseball, on Fangraphs. But also, I would tell a diehard fan, you're watching the game and you actually, if you're at least a little close to unbiased, know who's valuable and what they're bringing. Will Warren has been very valuable to the Yankees because his job was to start every 5 days. I cannot overstate that the fact that he has 16 starts, which is tied not only with Fried and Rodon, but for the major league lead. Like they needed somebody to step in and start the games. He has started the games. He has had one game where he pretty much completely took the Yankees out of it at Dodger Stadium. Aside from that, number two, what you want for your rookie back-end starter is when you hand the ball off to a reliever, do we still have a shot to win the game? I think he has done that at a very high percentage this year. I think the Yankees have won 7 of his last 9 starts now. And I think against, like, look, it's the Angels and the Orioles. Nobody's going to write letters home about the Angels and Orioles, but we see the Angels could put the ball out of the ballpark. The Orioles still have a lot of young talent. He is dragging the ball deeper into the game. So he's also not like, it isn't like, well, he's keeping us in the game, but he's giving us 4 1/3 innings. He's pushing it. And I thought yesterday, in a lot of ways, was as impressive as he could be because he's had a couple of bugaboos this year. Uh, Teams jump on his first pitch. They're
Yeah.
hitting over 400 against him. And I got to say, him and Wells made an adjustment. So the first 3 times there was a swing on the first, there were 2 singles, hard hit, and a hit by pitch on first pitches in the first 6 batters yesterday, right? And Wells and him noticed that the Orioles, they thought, were aggressively looking fastball early to go the other way. So they began to make an adjustment. The other thing is his OPS against lefty hitters is about 200 points higher for the worst. So like high 700s as opposed to high 500s for lefties. And the first 4 lefties for the Orioles yesterday, I think, got 3 hits and a walk. So he's down 2-0 in the first. He's given a gift. Jackson Holliday ridiculously gets picked off a second base. Just unforgivable. A reminder that there's a lot of bad baseball. It isn't only the Yankees, right? But to his credit, from there into the 7th inning of the game, what would I have told you? Like, me and you were sitting next to each other enjoying an adult beverage, and I turn to you when it's 2-0, I think 1 out.
1 out.
And I go, tell me how many outs you think Will Warren's getting today. The answer is not going to be 19. And that's how many he got. And so, like, when I see a stat like 0.1 WAR, I like WAR. I think it helps define things, but don't use it as more than pixels on a thing. And you're watching the game. And to me, Warren has been very valuable for durability. I hope I'm not hexing him. Durability, right? And actually growing on a kind of Clark Schmidt trajectory as a better pitcher who's understanding a little better how to navigate that lineup, not just 2 times, but now a 3rd time to kind of rest the bullpen a little bit. And I think it's been valuable. Was it 6, 7 starts of Ryan Yarbrough since the beginning of
Yeah.
May? Incredibly valuable. You're trying some of the baseball season because there's so much inventory. There's a game every night. Is the NCAA tournament? You're trying to survive in advance. Like tonight's a survive in advance night for the Yankees, right? They're starting Alan Winans because
Yeah.
Yarbrough was hurt, and now Winans has pitched exceedingly well at AAA, but his major league results, it's only 8 starts, but for Atlanta were terrible. So is the Yankee pitching program, did they help fix Alan Wentz? An interesting night,
Yeah.
right? Because we know an oblique injury isn't going to be a week. We know Stroman is maybe the next turn or the turn after. Hill is probably not to August 1st, a trade between now and then. I would say the best thing that the Yankees have done with their starting pitching, and this could change on a dime, is they've gotten out of needing a depth starter. Like I'm going to throw out a name, and I know this. I'm going to do it on purpose because I know this is a player they wouldn't want, but they don't need to like trade for Miles Michaelis from St. Louis. Who's like if St. Louis were trading, I believe he's a free agent at the end of the year. He makes a lot of money. He's 37, 38 years old, like that kind of guy. But he takes the ball every 5 days.
Yeah.
And if you get the right version of him, he could probably keep you in a game 7 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10, that kind of thing. I think what the Yankees have done is not have to worry about that, at least at this second. They've done good internal solving. And that, as you know, because we talked about it so much, was not an obvious early in the season when they had so many injuries and so many. Will Warren,
Yeah.
Ryan Yarbrough, what the hell's that? And look, now at some point Stroman's going to come back, and like the results so far haven't been good in the minor leagues. Uh, Not as bad as say like Frankie Montas, but not very good. Does he need one more? I think he's pitching Tuesday in the minors. Does he need one more after that to get up to maybe 80, 85, 90? And then I know it's hard for Yankee fans to remember, but for his first like 10 to 15 starts last year, he was good. And could the Yankees get good out of him till Hill and then stay healthy otherwise? And like just continue to solve the depth thing and then see who gets into the marketplace. And is it someone you can imagine starting someplace in a playoff series over the healthy versions of what you have?
Well, let me ask you this, Joel. Do you think that the Yankees front office, and I'm sure they are thinking this way, but could you see a potential for the Yankees to say, let's grab this starter that maybe a lot of people are like, really, this guy? And they can put him in the pitching lab and develop him into, I don't know, a 3 starter, like a Clark Schmidt. Is there a possibility there that could be a trade that they could be looking at? Like you're saying, it's not a depth guy, but it's a guy that we think has high upside, even though he hasn't lived up to that potential. Or no, you're shaking your head. I'm trying to read you right
No,
now.
no, no. I'm laughing because it's actually a good question, and I've thought of two things like that on it. One is I do think that's a little dangerous this time of year.
Mm.
The Orioles try to do this with
Trevor
Rogers
Rogers, yeah.
last year, where they're like, "Oh, he's struggling with the Marlins, but our data and our sports scientists say there's this there," and then you put him into actual games in real time, and it's like this is a tough time. Like everything's speeding up, the games matter. So I would think that that is a tough time.
It's a tough time, but the reason why I ask is because of the market, right? Like, let's say it's not a
Yeah,
great market for starting pitchers, and there's
yes.
so many teams going for those ace level guys, and you're like, I'm pricing myself out of that already. I don't want to give up a George Lombard for a 1 year, rental or whatever that ace may be, because we think we can take a better chance by paying less for something that we can get more return out of, if that makes sense.
So the other reason I laughed is I had my eye on somebody, and that guy has started to pitch great. I have always loved Jose Soriano from the Angels. He reminded me so much of the starting version, and he is now Clay Holmes is a starting now of Clay Holmes. Power sinker. If you remember Scott Erickson, power sinker, power sinker, power sinker. And the results, like I'd watch, this is the problem. You end up with a bias when you watch a guy, pro and con. For some reason, when I put on the package, I watch games late at night, the West Coast, to kind of like, I work at the network also, plus Yankees and Mets are national teams, they'll be looking at everyone. So oftentimes, even if I'm doing something else, I'll have Angels Mariners on just because that's what I do. And I've somehow channel surfed into a lot of Jose Soriano starts over the last couple of years. And I just kept saying, why aren't his numbers better? Like you just see the ball gets beaten into the ground like crazy against him. Like he's throwing hard, but he's not striking anybody out. And then like there was an afternoon start. Forgive me, Ryan, for not knowing who it was against. It wasn't against the Yankees or Mets. And I'm watching him pitch, and I think he struck out like 12 guys. And I was, well, now the secret's like that's done. Because and then he pitched really well against the
Yeah, he
Yankees
did.
also in the time. And you just see that, like, and I just kept thinking, do the Angels not have a mature pitching program where they're getting the best out of their Clay Holmes? And can somebody come along and kind of like thieve that guy a little bit and get him? I'm sure the whole industry, if I'm sitting and thinking it, the whole industry was probably thinking it, but that's out of the bag now. And also, the Angels are in that same boat as Texas pretty much. They're 2 games out of a wild card with an owner who has no ability to see anything from 20,000 feet and is going to make an immediate decision that he wants to try to win as many games as possible. So I think the last thing in the world they're probably going to do is trade a guy who might have pretty high-end number 3 or even number 2 stuff.
Yeah, Soriano, his last 3 starts was against the Sacramento Athletics. He
Yes,
went
that's a
12
game.
strikeouts, 7 innings. Then he had 7 innings, 6 hits, no runs, 6 strikeouts against the Yanks. And then his last start against the Astros, not a bad team to be up against. 6 2/3 innings, 1 run ball, 10 strikeouts. So he's been
It's like a
very
light
good.
went on for him because go look. Am I right? Like, if you look, you have an 11
Yes.
strikeout, 10 strikeout. He wasn't striking out guys until
No, I
recently.
mean
He was
before
striking
that
numbers,
12 strikeout game, he only struck out 3 against the Red Sox, 2 against Cleveland, 1 against Miami, 4 against the A's. Yeah, I mean he wasn't striking guys out really that much.
but you see the stuff and you're like, why isn't he? And if you put him at, like the mature pitching programs, Dodgers, Brewers, Rays, Mets, Yankee, like that group, like what would that guy become? Uh, you know, because like look, the Angels just again, based on ownership down, they don't put a lot of money in that extra stuff, sports science, etc., to try to like there are 10 organizations at least that are fanatical about the idea of every player must be maximized. How do we maximize every player? And I think some teams talk it, but don't put their wallet at it.
Yeah.
And the Angels are one of the teams that don't put a wallet at it.
Yeah, I mean
And so you see that great lump of clay
yeah.
in Soriano, and I'm just like, I kept watching him, and the two guys who came to mind over and over again were the young Scott Erickson and Clay Holmes. Because it's just like when you watch him, it's like it looks like he's throwing a bowling ball. The ball just dies and everybody just beats it into the ground. Anyway, I went off the beaten path again there.
It's okay. I think
Yeah.
this is great stuff. I mean, that's a guy that I wanted to hear from you. Like, that's what maybe the Yankees are looking at here. I don't think they're going to be in the market for a Sandy Alcantara unless his
I'll give
price
you another
drops.
one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give you another one whose stuff is always good. It's not Soriano, and this guy's hurt all the time. But Edward Cabrera from the Marlins,
Yeah.
I always think like I've seen him pitch a few times at City. Again, I'll channel surf into one of his starts, and I keep thinking, but he just doesn't stay
Yeah.
healthy. But it always feels to me like he's I once heard somebody describe a football team as like a 40-minute team as opposed to a 60-minute team. Like if you watch them, they do, but then they're going to run out of good plays to call and good players.
Yeah.
And someplace in the third quarter, they're going to get got. And like when I watch Cabrera, I always think he's about a like 3 1/3 inning starter, and then he's going to get got. And I'm like, is that because of him or because of injury history or because he's at a place where over the last, again, ownership down, where commitments are, isn't maximizing his full talents? But that kind of guy, like I could see a team like say even the Orioles trying to acquire that kind of guy. Like,
Yeah.
are we in the race? Aren't we? It doesn't matter. We have control of him for next year too.
I mean,
Like one of those guys, like one of the AL Central teams. They're all not going to make the playoffs. They're all going to try. If they need a starting pitcher, do they say, let's see what we could do that? I think it's tougher for the Yankees because that guy actually has to start every 5 days.
well,
And it looks like at least Tampa is going to push the Yankees to be good. Like not be able to like use mid-August to the end of the season as some kind of baseball laboratory. The Yankees going to have to push for 95 wins to get in.
yeah, I mean, let's be real though.
To
I
win
mean,
the division.
Will Warren's having an incredible year, and you're hoping that this sticks, right? Because we're almost at the end of June here, and
Yep.
you want to see more from him. You want to see what he does here over the next couple of weeks, because that's going to help you determine how aggressive you want to be at this market for, like, let's say a Soriano or a Cabrera if they became available. But you also need to see. I don't have a fifth starter right now. If you want to keep playing the wind up game between Winans, Stroman, and Yarbrough when he comes back, if he comes back. And JT Brubaker, you called him up now, so now he's in this whole, where does he fit in the bullpen? Does he make a couple spot starts for us? So there's a whole game being played here that the Yankees need to figure out. But the point still remains to what you had said just now. It's impressive what Will Warren has done because, like you said, I think the first pitch thing is a key note that I think he's maturing. He's leaning on his catchers. He's leaning on the pitching lab. He's getting better, realizing I can be a really good pitcher. I have the stuff to move and I can attack guys certain ways. But then the other point I wanted to highlight is Clark Schmidt's evolving a little bit here. I mean, that Saturday was a really, really good start there, throwing 7+ no-hit innings. I thought that was just like, all right, Clark, I see you now. Like this, I'm hoping this can stick and you could stay healthy and be a huge part of this team's rotation. And then we get Luis Heel throwing to live batters. Yankees fans are getting a little amped up about the starting rotation because, let's be real, Joel, the offense has not been as strong because Aaron Judge has not been having a great month in June. So the Yankees have had to try to piece together runs different ways. That's being tested. But I want to commend the starting rotation because we talked about it a couple weeks ago. We thought this could be a potential concern with the injuries and the struggles from certain guys, and the regression from Rodon and Fried was going to happen. I think it's impressive to see how the Yankees have put together good starting pitching almost every game.
Here's the one of the interesting things, Ryan. I think that this bad period for the Yankees is now like about a 10-game period, right? They're 3-7 in the 10 games. And it was particularly that bridge from Boston to the Angels where I think they lost 6 in a row.
Correct.
If their offense had just been bad for those 10 days, bad, not awful, well, like historically bad, like they had some history stuff to the negative for them, for their history, which is of course the most watched history. If it just been bad, the Yankees would have went 5-5 or 6-4. In those 10 days, the Yankees are leading the major leagues in ERA during a bad period. During a bad period, they've actually pitched great. And they kept getting a couple of games, got dragged to extra innings, whatever their extra inning thing is, they're not winning those games. But they're not winning in part because they're not advancing the runner from second. And we went through this last week and I ended up, you saw, writing about bad baseball. And I just think they have to be in the cleanup business of this because they know what it cost them in the past, and last year notably. And it was so is it a blip? Is this 10 days just a offensive blip, a bad baseball blip, or is it more? Because their pitching is 7-3, not 3-7 pitching in this period. And if it was, we'd be doing a different show today. They'd still be really comfortably ahead of Toronto and Tampa in the division. Instead, their offense hit a period here that's really bad. And even in victory yesterday, it wasn't all that great. They had 3 bang plays at the plate that all went to their favor to win a game yesterday, as we got the full Jazz Chisholm experience. It's so I don't know. I don't know what the 10 days mean, Ryan,
Right.
and why I'm cautious about putting too much, because you could also tell me, hey, they're 3 weeks away from having to send Dominguez to the minors and get a left fielder, or they're 3 weeks away from the offense isn't a problem at all. You got to get a high-end bullpen piece and go play.
So this is where I wanted to pivot here to the offense. We've talked about the starting rotation, how great it's been, and we highlighted, again, if they had just even bad offense, this rotation would have been rewarded with more wins this past week. The offense, though, so this again begs the question: as Aaron Judge goes, this offense goes. But I thought, and I think still believe this team was built to be multiple on offense, if that makes sense. It was built to be athletic, better on the base paths, get on base, make things happen. It feels like they've gone back to a lot of, if Aaron Judge doesn't perform well, we don't perform well. But then you get these weird sample sizes of Saturday, we hit a bunch of home runs, all lefties, obviously. And that's a little blip, but the rest of the offense really hasn't performed to point in June. I feel like this is a huge test point, Joel, for this offense to find themselves and say, we are more than just Aaron Judge. We can win games without Aaron Judge giving us what he normally does, because Giancarlo Stanton's back, DJ LeMahieu's back. We'll see how long they can stay healthy, but Jazz Chisholm, where are you at? Austin Wells, where are you at? Anthony Volpe, get out of your slump, where are you at? And then Trent Grisham, are you more of what you were earlier this year? Can you give us somewhere in the middle? Or are you going to go back to the old Trent Grisham that we saw last year? So there's a lot of questions here, Joel. I feel like we're going to find out answers here in the next couple of weeks, like you're pointing out. Where do you see this offense going right now?
Yeah, the right question again. And we're at an interesting inflection point because the returns of first LeMahieu, now Stanton, means the good news and the bad news, right? There's going to be like at least two guys on the bench every day who are used to being in the lineup every day. And do you get any kind of rot because of that? Do you lose something? Like you've got to let Stanton play now. But as we're seeing again, it seems like Ben Rice has made a adjustment to the positive in
Yeah.
these last few days and is really stinging the ball again. And uh, Yankees, well thought out. I think they're facing a bunch of lefties in Cincinnati. So they sat Goldschmidt for 2 days and had Rice on the field for 2 days. I think Boone, I know Boone because I was there yesterday, said he thinks Goldschmidt will start all 3 games in Cincinnati, but he's going to have to play this balancing act of all of this when one of the pieces in the puzzle simply can't get on the field. Who's Stanton? So what is Stanton DHing 8 out of 10 days? If he is, I still think there's a Judge DH day in those 10 days once because he understands the importance of preserving Judge and not abusing him, even as just the right fielder. Like I talked to Judge yesterday. We were talking about Will Warren after the game. I was just chatting with him alone. And I said, personally, for me, I think the most important thing Will Warren has given you guys is 16 starts. That attendance sometimes matters. And he essentially said, look who you're talking to. I became obsessed with attendance because I was missing too much time. I couldn't be who I wanted to be by by not figuring out how to be on the field all the time. So I think like the ability for Judge to bat 700 times is front of mind for the Yankees. Like he's the in that movement on the chessboard. Judge is starting in like I suspect the Yankees look in 10-game blocks. Okay, how many times do we think in 10 games? Dominguez should start, Rice should start, LeMahieu should start, Stanton should start, Grisham should start, Bellinger should start, Goldschmidt should start. I think I hit everybody who kind of is impacted by this. Well, Judge is starting all 10. To make sure he is standing and at his best on October 1st and is the thoroughbred he is all year, how many of those 10 games should he DH? And I'm sure what plays into that is how many off days do we have in the 10 days? So just if you think of it in 10-day blocks, if you're committed to Stanton for 8 and Judge for 1, which might be standard, that leaves one DH day every week and a half or so for somebody else. So there's not a ton of at-bats there, which is one of the reasons why I think you've begun to see Ben Rice mix in at catcher a little bit. And does that become the flex? Do they become comfortable enough with Rice? I think they like JC Esquera. I think they think that JC Esquera does at the highest level what they value the most, which is frame. You know, will the robot umps take that out? Who knows? But in 2025, they think he frames great. He obviously doesn't throw great. Teams are thoroughbreding around the bases on him. So, but to create a roster spot, if you think Rice could be the other catcher, you could send Escara to the minors and create a roster spot if need be, like in that fashion, and get Rice more at bats that way. I actually think they think JC Escar is going to be a good major league hitter.
I
Also,
was gonna
the
say,
ball comes the ball comes off his bat pretty well.
yeah.
You know, like will the league adjust that? I don't know. Like they like him. I'm not trying to get him off the rock. You know what I'm saying? But like if Rice becomes the priority, like hey, we can't have it where he's playing 2 out of every 6 games. We need that bat in the lineup. So like I think Goldschmidt is going to sit more,
Yep.
especially against righties. But will play a lot because I also think he'll just come in for defense
I mean,
late.
yesterday's prime example. I mean, not
Yeah.
defensively, but Joel, you want to talk about Stanton gets on with a single, you pinch hit with Goldschmidt. How
Good
about
try.
that play? And you had
Yeah.
talked about it in the offseason when you first talked about Goldschmidt coming to the Yanks. You said, Ryan, I know he's older, but this is a plus runner. And you highlighted it first year on this show. And I was like, really?
Well,
37 years old? And then yesterday
he's
we get the prime example, first to home on that play.
right. So again, like I think they had used their running bullets because Volpe had been in the game already and Dominguez had been in the game off the bench. So literally the next guy becomes Goldschmidt. And Goldschmidt is the great example of you don't have to be a burner to be a good base runner. You have to care. So much of the stuff we talk about being good at baseball is, do you care? Like, are you willing to be mentally challenged to do the routine over and over again with passion and diligence? Not everybody could do that. Most can't. Paul Goldschmidt can. And having said that, it was a terrible sin. He should have been out by 10 feet. Uh, but good for him that he never broke stride. He picked up the third base coach and he went and they scored an important run in the game. I think the Yankees did not have a great baseball day. Aaron Judge made a bonehead play, or the third base coach made a bonehead play in that game if he told him to get off the base. Like, what if that ball lands? Aaron Judge is going to walk home. If he catches it, you got to at least give yourself a tag chance. If he leaves his feet, he did leave his feet, and Judge was caught in no man's land and didn't score in that play. And Judge is one of their better baseball players, like as far as not just talent, but like he's very sharp as a game player, very aware. And I thought that was bad court awareness by him and or Luis Rojas at third base, not to have him anchored on the base.
Yeah, I just wonder again if they're pressing as an offense completely,
Yes,
just
I
because,
do think that's part of it.
right?
But that's like the moment where your IQ has to go up.
I know, and that's kind of what's hurt them, right, in the playoffs, especially when teams are pressing you and saying, "All right, let's see what you can really do in the high baseball cue moments."
Yeah.
When tag plays are happening, making the right reads on the running base, like when you're running the bases. Uh, you know, I was going to ask you about JC Scarra there as a quick follow up because he has been hitting, like, and I do wonder, does Austin Wells, do you give him a couple more days off? Because he hasn't really taken off Austin Wells in terms of offense. I know the power numbers are there, right, Joel? But the on base and the average are not there. So
I'm very surprised by it. I still think there's a good hitter in it. I think he's a little overwhelmed by the mental, physical challenges of catching as much as he does. If you stood next, and I think you probably have, stood next to Austin Wells, catcher does not come to mind. Like he's obviously in great, strong shape. You can't play as much as he does and still hit it all unless you do it. But he's not a big, imposing physical guy. And I do wonder if at getting closer to a timeshare in some way where he plays 50% of the game and Escara and Rice play the other 50% of the games would have some value because um I was talking to Ray Montgomery and Bo Porter from the Angels when they were in. They're both. Ray's managing the team now because of get well soon. Ron Washington, who's a great guy. Um, but I was talking to a couple of their coaches, and I think both, but definitely both said to me, the Yankee bench now poses a lot of problems matchup wise, etc. Because he said they have starting players on the bench and they could get very aggressive early as far as, hey, we got second and third and one out. Let's not be in this righty situation. We could go to a lefty here. And if you see Rice as a catcher, for example, and you're starting Rice or Escara, you still have another catcher on the bench if you want to get real aggressive with Wells as a pinch hitter at some point. So I think they have, like, I think that what should be looked at here is generally the good news of it all. Like Stanton had an interesting day yesterday. He looked terrible in 3 at bats and then hit a ball like 112 miles per hour for a hit. So like I think this is just who he's probably going to
that's who
be.
Giancarlo Stanton is. He's been
It's
like
that
that. Yeah.
experience. I will say it is LeMahieu's, whatever the results are, LeMahieu's having good at bats and hitting the shit out of the ball. Like the ball's being hit hard by DJ LeMahieu. It's on the ground again too much.
Yes, I
I don't
agree.
know if he could get in the air, but he's hitting it hard. He's got to get it up more, and he's having good at bats. He's swinging right, like I don't understand the offensive malaise because I think they have
Is
a
it
lot of good offensive players.
is it all tied to Judge though? Really,
I
like that?
do think that as Judge goes, so go the Yankees offense. It just shouldn't be as bad as it was in 22.
Right. Right.
Well, I'm sorry, 23.
23. 23.
Right? When
Yeah.
he's out of the lineup. I mean, they died in August that year
Yeah.
because he didn't play part of it. And then when he came back, he wasn't fully Aaron Judge after the toe injury. And they just were eliminated. Like that was the last time they had a longer losing streak
Yeah.
than they just went through now. I think they lost 9 in a row in that August. And so yes, they are tethered to Judge. And but it feels like they shouldn't be. Not to the extent they are.
Right.
And they should have a nice long lineup that could score in any inning. And so I'm trying to look at it from 10,000 feet, Ryan. Did they just have a 10 days where Judge didn't hit, everyone didn't hit, but they're going to be fine? Or do they have to go find another bat
Yes.
as part of this? And then you get in the business of where does that guy play? And I think the most obvious place would be left field.
Really? Because I was thinking third. I know third's hard to address. I
And
just
put Chisholm back at
back
second.
at second because I saw and this is Friday night, right? So Friday night, you get in the sticky situation when Max Fried gets a couple of really hard hit ground balls, and Jazz just feels like he's out of position at third, makes a tough play on the Gary Sanchez. It's Gary Sanchez running. I mean, he doesn't make the play, and then DJ LeMahieu, I just don't think he has much range at all at second.
Yeah.
And he gets the ground ball through the stack, which you really thought was like, that should have been probably made if Jazz is there, because he's out of position. So I just
but you're talking about defense, not offense for the change.
Right.
I'm wondering if they need and the problem is he's not going to get runway where he's playing every day. My question is if Dominguez is playing 6 or 7 times out of every 10 games, what are you getting out of him? And would you be better off than in some kind of lefty righty platoon where it's like Bellinger plays a lot, like 8 or 9 out of 10, and Grisham plays against all righties in center field, but against lefties you have a better right-handed bat. And that's kind of like the lefty, it's a righty lefty thing with Bellinger, but Bellinger just moves to center, like he's playing all the time. I don't know. I've been thinking about a little bit is like, can you do better than what Dominguez is bringing?
Yeah.
And also, like, are you worried? Like, if you take Dominguez and do the Francisco Alvarez thing and send him to the minors, am I going to lose the guy mentally? It's like, this was supposed to be the season. You're going to get your 500 at bats. We're going to find out about you kind of thing. I don't know that they'll do that. I still think he's probably been overall above league average on offense, but it's just the technical baseball stuff is so bad.
It's frustrating.
When he plays, you're going to play big games, and every time the ball goes up to left field, you're going to be wondering about it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I guess
there's a good player. There's a good player in there. I do wonder
does he become
if there's a great player in there.
Okay, great player. Okay. I mean,
like or even a well above, forget about great. Great is really elite category. Is there a well above average player in Jason Dominguez when you have to take everything into account, which is he might be fast, but will he be a bad base runner? He might be fast with a good arm or whatever, but can he play defense? Can he, like, in other words, he's toolsy, but is there an above average baseball? I don't know.
He's young.
Like,
he's still really
we
young.
haven't seen enough yet.
Yeah, he's still really young, and I feel like there's still a lot of baseball he still has to play to develop. And we'll see. I just going back again to the reason why I asked about the defensive part too is because I think that will help your offense if you were to able to find a solid right-handed third baseman, like and again, I'm just gonna throw this name out there. If the Diamondbacks were ever to sell, Eugenio Suarez is the perfect bat and perfect option for the Yankees at third base. He gives you power. He's a right-handed bat, and he mashes the hell out of the ball. And I think he could give you solid defense. I know he's not great like he used to be, but solid defense at third, and I can move Jazz back to second, and I think that's your strongest part. Because I think ultimately, Joel, if we're going to play October 1st baseball here, I don't think Dominguez is probably starting, to be honest with you. I think they're going to go Bellinger, Grisham, and Judge. And that's just how it's laying out right now.
Yeah. You think even against the righty?
Even against the righty. I just think they love Grisham. They love his defense. And he's getting a lot of at-bats still. And he's still popping the ball out a little bit. I know there's some cheapies at Yankee Stadium, but he still hits the ball hard. Like, I will give him credit there. He hits the ball hard, Grisham. Yeah. So I think that's what they're looking at right now. And Dominguez is your toolsy player off the bench that you could put in later in the game.
So I would put Suarez in the category. There's so few good bats in the game. So few will be available. It also will beg the question, why would the Yankees win for him? Like, because I'd ask this question: who needs Suarez more, the Yankees or the Mets? The Mets currently have 3 third basemen and no third baseman.
Right.
Right? They got 3 inexperienced guys, one of whom had a great year last year in Vientos, who probably will be back tonight or tomorrow, right? He's very close to returning. And if like none of those guys, like the Met lineup, we're talking about the Yankee lineup, the Met lineup falls off the cliff at 4. Once they get to like Nimmo or Alonso at 4, like their first 4 are really good. And then like McNeil had a little run here for a while. Martes had a little run, but in general, 5 through 9 has been a toxic waste dump. Like as far as it, like you get defense from Tyrone Taylor, and I mean, I think he's a very good baseball player. Like he helps you win a game every day, and you get good baseball player stuff from Luis Torrens. But like the fact that Alvarez didn't develop to give you an offensive catcher. And I think they thought they'd get 20, 25 homers out of Jose Siri in center field
Yeah.
and good defense. Like those are two. And, Winker hasn't been around to give him some left-handed diversity. Like I could make a case that the Mets need Suarez, unless you're like, nah, we're not going to do that. We're just going to stick with the 3 young guys and believe one of them is going to break through.
Yeah, I think you could make almost the same discussion here with the Yanks because again, Volpe went through that massive slump here recently,
Yeah.
and Wells has not been hitting for average, and you haven't seen the development from Jason Dominguez like you would hope offensively so far. And I think we're right. We're in that 10-game span where we're analyzing what the hell this offense is right now. We're gonna find out, I think, again over this week if they can respond and get better. But if I continue more data points of Volpe really is a terrible on base player who will occasionally have these great 1 week, 2 week runs, and then he's one of the worst offensive players in baseball for like a 2 or 3 week span. I need to figure out how to get more pop in the bottom or middle of that lineup because I can't have Anthony Volpe batting 6 anymore. He needs to go down to 7, 8, 9, in my opinion. He cannot be bat more than 7th in that lineup. And until I see more from Austin Wells, if he goes on that run like he did last year, great. But I haven't seen it yet. So that's kind of where I'm at, Joel, and that's where I'm saying, like, I think the bat might be needed here, like, big time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you an example of a guy who, again, I hate talking about things in the age of aggregation, and I don't think they'll trade for him. Lane Thomas has been one of the worst players in the major leagues this year. Go look at Lane Thomas's numbers. I mean, he's hitting like 140. I'm not joking, with like a 4 something. Like it's terrible. And he's in his walk year. But when he played with the Nationals, he was a guy like he'd come to Citi Field and I go, who's a good baseball player? Lane Thomas is a good baseball player. Runs the bases well, could defend even center field, lefties, kills left, like the whole thing. And I really like him. And I keep like looking at him thinking, is he a really good player trapped in it? And you could trade for him and make him the right-hand part of a left field platoon and it'd be good. Or is Lane Thomas done as a good major league player? I mean, done. I mean, those numbers are done numbers. Those are, he's been like him and Michael Conforto have been like 2 of the worst regularly used players in the major leagues this year, like outfield wise. And I keep looking at both because I keep looking, the Dodgers might have extra, the Guardians might want to get out of a guy who's a walk-year, and I keep looking for teams that either need a lefty bat or a righty outfield bat because I personally like Michael Conforto too. I love dealing with him when he was a Met. I think he's a great guy to deal with. And I thought he was really talented too. And he especially killed righty pitching last year playing in San Francisco. Not an easy place to kill it. And I keep looking at those 2 guys. Like, are they going to take off? That's what I mean by how sensitive things are.
Yeah.
Like, if Lane Thomas had a good 3 weeks starting tonight, would some team say, yeah, he was bad for like 10 weeks, but he's really a good supplementary player. He was good enough to get traded to the Guardians, who get to the ALCS last year. And and the funny thing is he played really well for Washington, played terrible for Cleveland last year, but then had a couple of huge hits in the postseason for them. But like that it's the prejudice. It's why the analytic stuff is so important and valuable, Ryan, because like you get so biased, pro and con. Like Lane Thomas played well in front of me a lot. And every time I'd watch him, I go, man, one of the New York teams should trade for him. He's really a good player. And I am telling you, I watch it all the time. And I'm like, he is the worst player like in the major leagues this year. And I haven't given up. I haven't sold my property yet with him, where I'm like, I just like the player, but I'm not watching him every day. His skills maybe are gone. I
Yeah.
don't know. They shouldn't be. I don't think he's that old. He's probably like 30,
He's
31, right? Like
29.
29, right? So anyway, that was another detour I didn't mean to take us on. But like I'm watching the field in general, but I keep watching what I think would be helpful for the two New York teams in specific. Um, and like I do think the Yankees need one more good right-hand hitter.
That's what I wanted to hear, and that's what I was going to
Yeah.
ask you. Like over
You
the next
know,
couple of
and
weeks, is
does
that going to
that play,
solidify that point?
yeah, does that play left field? Does it play third base? Does it play second base? Does it, I think it's one of the reasons you saw like Isaiah kind of left his name get floated this week.
Yeah.
And I think it's very real. You know, my podcast partner and one of my best friends in life is John Heyman, and if he reports it, it's accurate. And I know it's accurate because I then heard it also. And he had been a player I'd been monitoring because in the best of all possible worlds, here's another little tricky thing to think about. So the Stanton move, as we expected, was Pablo Reyes. The next move is probably Peraza, but there is a little dangerous game there because once you take Peraza off, who's the backup shortstop if
Right.
something happens?
Right.
Like we saw again yesterday. First of all, Peraza stung the ball yesterday right at somebody, but he's hitting terrible. But he can really field. He's a better shortstop than Volpe.
Oh yeah.
Like you could Gold Glove me with Volpe. He's a better defensive shortstop
I
than Volpe,
absolutely agree.
right? And so the one thing you'd want if like suddenly like Volpe gets hit by a pitch and breaks out, like and you're out for a little bit, is you got to make sure the defense is sound there. So that's again why I'm thinking the optionability of Dominguez or Esquera, does that come into play? Because while you'll say Peraza doesn't play enough to justify sending one of those guys down, it's just like, unless you're acquiring a guy like kind of Falefa who could play second, third, left, but he could be your shortstop in an emergency.
Right.
Like Lane Thomas couldn't be that. Eugenio Suarez couldn't be that. And so I'm not sure that you just knock the chess piece of Peraza off the board, because if you pencils down on July 31st, I hate to go full circle, but 6 p.m. July 31st, it's pencils down. And if something happens to Volpe on August 1st, and you're going to Braden Shumaki at like AAA as your shortstop for the New York Yankees in a pennant race, that's a tough deal,
Yes.
probably. So just I think IKF's name has come up because he plays all the positions that you'd think about. The one thing about him, he hasn't hit lefty pitching this year. His numbers are terrible against lefties. So do you take that as, well, he historically is good against them. But he's just as likely to have 50 good plate appearances against lefties for the rest of the season if you got him. This is the tricky thing.
It's a tricky game, man.
At this time of year. I think we talked about this when we were doing shows last year, Ryan, which is, I know fans tend to do the thing, and not just fans, reporters, front office guys, you'll be like, Yankees need a relief pitcher. You start running your finger down whatever category you like. Do you like strikeout percentage? Do you like ground ball percentage? Do you like ERA? Whatever you like. And you stop at this is a non-contending team. This guy's numbers this year are this. Go get him. But as we know, because we talked a lot about regression to the mean with the Yankee offense, that's a dangerous game. You're almost better off acquiring Clay Holmes as a relief pitcher, like the Yankees did 5 years ago, who you love, and he's got like a 5 ERA because you actually think he's a 3 ERA guy. And so that means he's got to pitch to like 1 something the rest of the year. Like that is the most fungible, volatile role on the, like Mark Leiter Jr. is pitching really well for the Cubs, and he gets to the Yankees, and then he's not pitching well. So That's always a tough one. There's very few relievers who have great track records year after year of just being good. And by the way, one of them was Devin Williams, and he pitched lousy for about 8 weeks here.
Yeah, that's right, Joel. Well, I'm gonna do pencils down on this episode here today because that was fun. I'm glad we went through all that. We're gonna get more evidence this week. They're playing the Cincinnati Reds tonight. Ellie De La
Yep.
Cruz will be electric. Yankees fans, you get to watch him tonight. The next couple of games, and then we'll go from there. And we'll talk to you as always on every Monday, Joel. We appreciate you for all your time and all your insight on all Yankees baseball, man.
And I know we both appreciate everybody who watches. Thanks for that.
As always, he's the man. Thank you, Joel.
Thanks, Ryan.